Well, there has been a significant increase of women in the workforce, an estimated 47% of the labour force now being female. And we want to focus and home in on the issue of wellness of women at work, with particular reference to the M word, and this is a menopause. And if a number of you are in leadership positions or are at work already in, either perimenopausal or in full-blown menopause, this is a conversation you really want to listen to. Advaita Naidoo is Africa MD at Jackhammer Global to talk to us about this. Advaita, good morning to you, and thank you very much for your time. Talk to us a bit more about your work and why this is an important issue that we need to be talking about.
Thanks so much for having me. Look, I want to preface by stressing I'm not a clinician or a medical professional. Jackhammer is an executive search firm, and we believe in creating amazing workplaces. And with this in mind, and in light of the fact that August was Women's Month, this is an issue we felt deserved attention as a potential unconscious bias against or limiting factor for women in the workplace. Menopause remains a taboo topic in the workplace and, society at large, let's be honest. I think it intersects with two historically quite uncomfortable subjects, which is aging and women's health. And we know there's been progress in recognizing women's well-being when it comes to childbirth or child rearing, and some progress when it comes to mental health. But we're still overlooking menopause due to lack of awareness, or we're taught not to talk about these things. There's an uncomfortable association with a decline in productivity and relevance. And then, as you said, despite the fact that almost 50% of the workforce comprises women, many workplaces are still male-dominated at the more senior levels, where logically the prevalence of menopause would be higher.
Yeah.
And topics related to women's bodies are viewed as uncomfortable or inappropriate to discuss.
They are, and we see that anecdotally as well with a number of women who are in leadership positions. Here's the thing, given, the fight for women to be in the workplace and also to advance, to those C-suite positions, which is still woefully low in terms of women's representation, a lot of women will say, we just shut up and put up because we don't want this to be seen as something that would disadvantage us. And so they deal with the discomfort and they make all of those sacrifices. But as you say, really important to home in on that, put a spotlight on it. I know you're not a clinician, but let's talk about what we conventionally understand menopause to be for those in the back of the classroom who still don't know what it is and how it affects women in the workplace.
So I think let's home in on those workplace issues. So it affects not only physical health with things like hot flashes and sleep disturbances, but can also present some cognitive or emotional challenges, some mood swings or memory lapses, and those can make daily tasks more difficult and more stressful. And then for women in senior leadership especially, these can be particularly pronounced where they face intense pressure to perform at a very high level of competence. And then that leads to a cycle of increased stress and anxiety. It impacts confidence and decision-making abilities. And I think, in the workplace, if there are no policies in place to support systems tailored to menopausal women, we can find absenteeism, decreased productivity in extreme cases. And, as you say, the representation is already woefully low, but women may step down from leadership roles. And so the challenge for leaders, I think, should be not to be reductive in their thinking and then diminish the lived experience of women by saying, she's going through menopause, or, stigmatizing it the way we've stigmatized PMS, because this unnecessary stigma really exacerbates all these difficulties as women feel they should keep their symptoms hidden.
So let's talk about the support that's needed. So, the physical manifestations, you've spoken to some of the conditions, and I can already see some smugness, or can anticipate some smugness around, then maybe that's why women shouldn't be entrusted with really, sensitive roles where their judgment is needed to be on point, 100% of the time and things like that. But I want to put that aside for a moment. We're not talking about the inability of women to fulfill their roles. We're talking about how it is made much more challenging to be able to fulfill those roles and to be able to compete when they're going through very serious changes in their bodies. And as you mentioned, again, sleep deprivation, some issues that require them to be even more, more on point, so to speak, at work. What supportive structures should be in place? One imagines, obviously, understanding the issue and what's happening is a great starting point.
So, on the point about the smug looks, I don't think a woman's ability to lead is impacted by menopause any more than a man having a paddle injury affects his ability to run a company.
Oh, but, no, you didn't talk about paddle, did you?
No,
Or
I
golf,
went there.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think most of the accommodations that companies can make are really the same as for other inclusion measures. And once, as you say, once this gets spoken out loud, once there's this awareness, we can't claim that it's an unconscious bias anymore. So we start by creating a supportive culture, make sure that menopause is not a taboo subject. You promote open conversations and you raise the awareness. And that could be training sessions, it could be workshops. But the point is that education and awareness is key. And then I think where necessary, implement flexible work arrangements, remote work, adjustable hours. Women should be able to take breaks as needed, help them manage their symptoms like fatigue and maybe the sleep disturbances. And the flexibility allows them to maintain their productivity while taking care of their health. Access to healthcare resources. I know, admittedly, this is not a quick win. This is a big structural investment, but companies love wellness programs as an indication of how they look after their teams. So these could include on-site clinics, mental health resources, partnerships with medical professionals who specialize in menopause, counseling services, stress management programs to help women manage this physical, emotional, and psychological trauma that they're going through. And then I think that the last thing is just managerial support. Leaders are expected to be upskilled in a range of things. Managing a team that has people of different ages or different generations, they're taught to be culturally sensitive. And this is really just one of those diversities that they should be taught to be aware of. And again, it's vital that they don't then become reductive about it and put all issues with women down to menopause or PMS or pregnancy brain. But awareness is really half the battle won.
And that awareness should be driven, I think, is one of the things that you're urging by women leaders themselves to take it out of the stigma, out of the taboo, to bring it into the mainstream. I know that we're still facing that battle when it comes to menstruation and the shame and the stigma attached to that. But more and more as people begin to speak, it becomes a normal word. We can talk about having a period at work and, not worry too much who's going to overhear the P word. And the same with the M word or with menopause. Talk to us about some of the work that leaders are doing in being able to make it a natural conversation, that this is something that's happening and we've got to face it head on, we've got to accept it.
So look, unfortunately, there isn't a lot of this work happening because, as we said, it is still such a taboo subject. And I think you're right. When women in leadership roles share their stories, it does send a powerful message that it is a natural, manageable part of life. It doesn't diminish a woman's capabilities or value in the workplace. It challenges perceptions that she's past her prime, and it's authentic role modeling. But at the same time, the onus should not just be on the women to talk about these things and send the lift back down and open up these pathways for conversations. We also need more male allies in the workplace to destigmatize the conversation because it affects so many more people than you would think. And, men have wives, daughters, aunts, sisters, who are all going to go through this. So making this purely a woman's issue is problematic.
Yeah, I mean, and I hear you, and I think that is absolutely important. So I co-sign what you've just said. But again, in a context of, what is acceptable for me to broach with my female counterpart? Like, where are the limits? What are the sensitivities? How do I do this in a way, that is right and doesn't make her feel uncomfortable? How do men begin to navigate that space? And let's be real, because we are in an era of high sensitivities around a number of things and the respect for another person's boundaries.
Absolutely. I think, again, it's one of those things where it comes to diversity and inclusion measures where it doesn't need to be spoken out loud to know that we're addressing the problem. But the point is that if we have a supportive enough environment where all people feel welcome at all times, then again, that's half the battle won. So I shouldn't have to wonder whether this is an acceptable thing to discuss. I shouldn't have to wonder whether I need to say to my manager, you know what, I need 3 hours off this afternoon because I'm feeling fatigued. It should be one of those things that is actually taken for granted, that in order to manage my physical and mental well-being, I should be able to say this. And it's not going to impact my productivity because I'm going to catch up later.
I want to go back to the ageism issue that you mentioned, and also just to remind people that it's not, necessarily the grey-haired executives or the grey-haired in the female part of the workforce. that are prone to menopause. You can have early onset, perimenopause. You can have, things start as probably as in your late 30s to early 40s and so on. So it really is individual. And that awareness, I think, is very, very important. But this idea of, if you're getting older, then it's time to maybe start thinking about the next step. I mean, this is a big issue, right? So, and as you say, probably one of the reasons why people will keep what they're going through close to their chest.
Absolutely. I think the misconception that it is an older woman's issue, it feeds into the ageist attitude. Employers probably unfairly view menopausal women as being past their prime. They may be overlooked for promotions or leadership roles or challenging assignments, even when they are actually at the height of their experience and capability. They've built all this track record. It exacerbates the stigma around discussing it in the workplace, as you say, because they do feel judged for appearing too old or less capable. And then obviously that's going to impact career progression. They could find themselves stuck in these mid-level positions, fewer opportunities for advancement just because of the misconception that, like you said, they are past their prime.
Yeah, Advaita Naidoo, thank you very much. I think an illuminating conversation to have this awareness around menopause, how HR and corporations can support women who are going through menopause, and the importance, where possible, for women to speak up and to, at least in part, help to normalize the fact that this is happening. Thank you very much for your time. Really do appreciate it this morning. Africa MD at Jack Hammer Global.